Mr. Escobar said, they were on scene for approximately, the evidence is going to show, the officers were on the scene for 22 minutes before there was another accident. On the highway, they put out no flares.
Notice how quickly the prosecutor frames the police response here. No flares, no warnings, nothing. That tiny detail might sound minor, but in court, it can completely flip the question of who's truly at fault.
Y'all were given an oath downstairs, and that was a general oath, but I need to give you an oath for this specific case. So if each of you will raise your right hand for me, please. Do each of you solemnly swear and affirm in the case of the state versus Alexander Castro, you will a true verdict render according to the law and evidence, so help you God? Yes. All right, you can lower your hand. State, thank you. State, do you have any opening statements?
Yes.
All right, you may proceed.
On July 22nd, 2022, Alexandra was heading home. She just spent the day with her boyfriend Josh. They went golfing, they went out to dinner, they went back to Josh's apartment and watched a movie. Her home was her parents' house. In order to get there, she had to go north on 281. While she was on 281, she ran into traffic. Traffic as far as the eye could see. You're going to hear from Officer Morgan. He's a 3-year San Antonio police department officer. He was responding to the cause of the traffic. It was a car crash that happened further north on 281. Now, while responding to this car crash, Officer Morgan was notified of another car crash that happened further south on 281. He was in his patrol vehicle, he got out, and started walking over. But then he started running because he saw several cars that were very damaged. He ended up talking to two of the drivers of those damaged cars. One of those drivers was the defendant, Alexander Castro. Now, while talking to the defendant, Officer Morgan noticed a third vehicle that had been heavily damaged. It was a little further south. He ran. Inside that car was Alexander Cyber. She was unconscious. She had an open head wound. She was bleeding heavily. She never woke up from that.
And just like that, we know the stakes. This isn't just about a crash, it's about a death. Now ask yourself, should this trial focus on one driver, or the chain reaction of failures that led here?
EMS came to the University Hospital, and Officer Morgan began his part of the investigation. An Officer Morgan's a patrol officer. Whenever there's a potentially fatal crash, patrol officers have to call SAPD's Traffic Investigation Division. They're the experts when it comes to car crashes. They can recreate, they can figure out how this happened. Officer Morgan didn't have any eyewitnesses who could directly say exactly what happened. So all of the drivers that were involved were kept at the scene so that they can talk to TID. But Officer Morgan made a mistake. TID told him to follow up. He didn't. While conducting his investigation, he spoke with the defendant several times. We want to hear that. He asked why things happened. You're going to hear what the defendant had to say.
Stop it. Get some help.
TID eventually realized that there was no follow-up. So several hours after, they made the scene, spoke to the drivers, and began their investigation. You're going to hear from several of the witnesses, several of the people who were on the highway when this happened. They did not see what happened. One of the witnesses was involved. His car was half crushed in due to the defendant's car hitting him at high speed. You're going to hear from several 911 callers who saw the traffic, who saw the long line, and decided to exit because that's how far away you could see this. They had enough time to exit. One of the 911 callers saw the defendant's vehicle speed down 281, approaching all the cars that were waiting there in traffic. He didn't see the accident. He saw the debris fly in the air. He heard the actual crash. You're going to hear from now Sergeant Martinez. She was a detective at the time with TID. She was the primary detective that was investigating this case. She looked at the roadway evidence. She looked at data from both Alexandra's car and the defendant's car. And she was able to calculate and figure out exactly how fast the defendant was going. He was going over 90 miles per hour. Never hit his brakes. Never made any attempt to avoid any of the cars.
Over 90 miles per hour. No braking. No swerving. That's the prosecution's smoking gun, and it sounds devastating. But buckle up, because the defense has a very different version of this story.
I'm so vulnerable. Safe to ask you to listen to the evidence. To think about what we're presenting. Officer Morgan was disciplined for what happened, for not following up. He was also disciplined for not further investigating. We'll hear from him why that happened, what happened there. But don't let that failure on Officer Morgan's part cloud you and how reckless the defendant's actions were. So the state's asking you to listen and to judge how reckless his actions were that night.
Thanks. Any opening statements?
Yes, Judge.
This case is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. We have to acknowledge that up front. It is a tragedy. Alexandra Sober lost her life as a result of this tragedy. But this tragedy is not a crime. And I'm going to tell you why it's not a crime. And you can agree with some things that Mr. Escobar said, but I disagree with others. I'm going to tell you the whole story about what happened that night. Because I'll tell you what, you didn't mention that name. Shayna Alassal. You're not going to hear her come as a witness. No criminal case filed against her. But Shayna Alassal was the first domino that caused this chain reaction where Alex drove into a scene of a crash. Shayna Alassal, you're going to see, evidence is going to show that Shayna Alassal argued with her husband. Shayna Alassal drank. Shayna Alassal drove the wrong way on Highway 281. She drove the wrong way up the exit ramp on 281 and had a collision with a vehicle. Shayna Alassal was driving the...
Here comes the defense strategy, the domino effect. Instead of focusing on Castro, they push the blame onto another driver, Shayna Alassal, painting her as the first domino that knocked everything over.
wrong way on the highway. But for the conduct of Shayna Alassal, the truth is, but for the conduct of Shayna Alassal, Alexandra Stewart wouldn't have been sitting on the highway, parked in that wrong lane of traffic Mr. Escobar talked about. Alexandra Stewart